The year was 2010. In the quiet town of Santiam Junction, Oregon, a daughter, whose name is not important for this tale, found herself sifting through the belongings of her recently departed father. A week had passed since his funeral, and the task of clearing out his room was heavy with grief. But what she unearthed that day wasn't just old memories, it was a chilling secret, a forbidden chapter from his past that would shatter everything she thought she knew about him. Tucked away, hidden from plain sight, was a journal. A journal her father, a man she had known her entire life, had never once mentioned, never once been seen writing in. And within its aged pages, one entry, dated June 1, 1960, screamed a terror so profound, it would make her blood run cold and leave her questioning if the monsters from childhood stories were, in fact, real. This is his story, June 1, 1960. The screams of my best friends, Jim and James, still echo in my ears, a symphony of pure, unadulterated horror. They were frozen, unable to move, as she feasted upon them, tearing the flesh from their legs. In those agonizing moments, they must have known, just as I did, that this was the end. As I lay there, paralyzed, my mind raced back to how it all began, to the innocent summer day that plunged us into a nightmare beyond imagination. We had all grown up hearing the whispers, the old wives' tales of a witch lurking deep within the Santiam forest. Stories of children who ventured too far, swallowed by the ancient woods, never to be seen or heard from again. We dismissed them, of course, as nothing more than spooky campfire stories, meant to keep us young, adventurous boys from straying too far. Oh, how wrong we were. Summer vacation, 3 glorious months of freedom. That first week started like so many others. I'd wake up, grab a quick bite, and meet Jim and James at the edge of the forest. Our days were filled with exploration, BB gun target practice, and the carefree laughter of 12-year-old boys. Jim and James weren't just my best friends, they were my brothers. Since I was an only child, they filled a void, a camaraderie so deep, it felt like we could read each other's minds. We never argued, never fought, our decisions were always unanimous, our adventures always shared. Our favorite summer haunt was the river that snaked its way out of the forest and through our town. It was our sanctuary, a place to cool off from the scorching Oregon sun, and a bountiful source of brook trout, which we expertly caught with our bare hands. We'd build a fire, cook our catch, and devour it right there on the riverbank. Sometimes, though, our adventurous spirits would lead us further, following the river's winding path deep into the forest, until we reached a magnificent waterfall cascading from towering cliffs. For years, those cliffs marked our boundary. We never ventured beyond them. Perhaps it was the unsettling tales of the witch, or perhaps, as we convinced ourselves, it was simply too dangerous to climb. But that day, something was different. A surge of inexplicable bravery, or perhaps foolishness, took hold. James, with a glint of daring in his eyes, suggested we climb the cliffs, just to see what lay beyond. And to my surprise, neither Jim nor I objected. In fact, we wholeheartedly agreed, our 12-year-old hearts pounding with the thrill of the unknown. With the boundless energy and curiosity only boys our age possess, we began our ascent. Reaching the top was far easier than we anticipated. Before us lay a breathtaking vista, a vast valley, stretching as far as the eye could see, blanketed in a dense, verdant carpet of pine trees. It was beautiful, inviting, and for a fleeting moment, we forgot all the warnings, all the ominous stories. This, we thought, was a new world, untouched, waiting to be explored. We followed the river, our voices echoing with excitement as we tossed rocks and sticks into the water, imagining ourselves as the first to ever set foot in this pristine wilderness. But as the sun began its descent, casting long, eerie shadows through the trees, a chilling realization dawned upon us. Dusk was approaching, and with it, the unsettling darkness of the forest. An overwhelming fear seized us, tightening its icy grip around our hearts. We stood there, paralyzed, staring at each other, a silent acknowledgement of our perilous situation. And then, from the depths of the darkening woods, we heard it. A cackle, a sound so vile, so utterly hideous, it made every hair on our bodies stand on end. This wasn't the sound of playful mirth, this was pure, unadulterated evil. We immediately spun around, desperate to escape, when something to our left caught our eyes. It was moving, swiftly, relentlessly, through the thick pine trees, hurtling towards us. The encroaching darkness in the dense foliage made it impossible to discern its exact form, but its speed, its silent, predatory approach, filled us with primal dread. Quick glimpses revealed a shadowy, darting figure, closing in. The last thing I remember before the blackness consumed me was James's desperate, echoing cry, "Run! Run! Run!" I don't know how long I was out, but I awoke to a suffocating panic and absolute, impenetrable darkness. I whispered out for Jim and James, my voice barely a tremor in the stillness, but there was no reply. I lay there, motionless, trying to gather my scattered thoughts, to make sense of the nightmare. Then, through a tiny gap in the pine trees, I saw it, a light. A fire, to be precise. A wave of momentary relief washed over me. My friends, they must have built a fire, waiting for me. But then, a cold, hard truth slammed into me. My friends would never leave me alone in the dark, so far from their side. If they had found me, they would have built a fire right where I lay. And then it all came rushing back. The hideous cackle, the swift, unseen thing in the trees, the paralyzing fear. Tears, hot and stinging, pricked my eyes, a million needles jabbing at my soul. It took every ounce of courage I possessed to finally stand. My eyes were slowly adjusting to the profound darkness. Cautiously, methodically, I crept towards the flickering light, maintaining a safe distance, making sure to stay hidden. I hunkered down behind a massive pine tree, intending to observe, to understand who or what had built that fire, before revealing myself. As I huddled there, the faint sounds of whimpering and crying reached my ears. I cupped my hand to my ear, straining to hear. And then, the words, whispered in a desperate plea, pierced through the night, "Please, please stop. Please stop eating me." My blood ran cold, my heart seized in my chest, and I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die right there, choked by terror. I gasped for air, screaming at myself to run, to flee, to get as far away from that horrifying scene as possible. But my body betrayed me. I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, a prisoner of my own fear. Air finally flooded my lungs after what felt like an eternity, my head spinning, dizzy with shock. After a few minutes, I managed to calm myself enough to think. I knew I had to escape, but I also had to find my friends, even in this oppressive darkness. If I could just find the river, I could follow it back to the cliffs and wait until morning, before attempting the treacherous descent. I reached out, bracing myself against the nearest pine tree, attempting to stand as quietly as possible. My legs, numb from lying motionless for so long, felt like lead. I decided to wait a few minutes, to allow the blood to flow back, to regain some control before attempting to walk. I knew stealth was paramount. I couldn't risk stumbling and making a sound. After what felt like an eternity, I turned, hoping to retrace my steps towards the river. But as I was about to take my first step, that hideous cackle ripped through the silence once more. Only this time, it was directly behind me. I froze, unable to move a single muscle. It was inches away. I could feel its fetid breath on my neck, hear the wet smacking of its lips, and smell its horrific stench. It was a smell worse than any rotting animal carcass we had ever encountered during our mountain explorations. My mind screamed, "Run! Run! Damn you!" But my legs refused to obey, rooted to the ground as if encased in concrete. I was about to turn my head, to glimpse the monstrosity behind me, when a hand, cold and clammy, clamped down on my shoulder. In that split second, a surge of pure adrenaline ignited within me, and I bolted, running as fast as my legs could carry me, stumbling blindly through the dense forest. I had no idea where I was going, but I didn't care. All that mattered was putting as much distance as possible between myself and that thing. After what felt like an eternity of desperate running, I had to stop. My body rebelled, adrenaline and exertion forcing me to vomit, my lungs burning, my legs screaming in protest. Once I recovered, the horrifying realization of why I was running spurred me on. I had to keep going until I found the river. As I regained my composure and stood up, the cackle echoed again, this time directly in front of me. Then, a loud thwack, and I hit the ground in a heap, writhing in unimaginable pain. Warm, sticky blood gushed from my head. Whatever had cackled and struck me then grabbed my leg, dragging me through the forest at a terrifying pace. It was incredibly strong, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I had no hope of breaking free. My head spun, consciousness fading in and out. When I next awoke, I was lying next to the fire, the same fire I had seen earlier. I tried to move my arms and legs, to push myself up, but it was futile. I was completely paralyzed. All I could do was think of my friends, wondering about their fate. As I strained my gaze, Turning my head as much as my body allowed, I saw them. The bloodied, dismembered bodies of Jim and James. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my throat. It was as if my vocal cords had been ripped out. I commanded my body to move, to run, but it remained unresponsive. Tears streamed down my face as the intense heat from the fire blistered my skin. The throbbing pain in my head, the searing burn on my arm, I couldn't tell which was worse. I must have passed out again, for I remember waking to the most grotesque face I had ever seen, inches from mine. It was a female, or at least, I thought it was. But whether it was human or something else entirely, I couldn't say. Her skin was a moist, pale, filthy mess. Her hair, jet black and greasy, was tangled and matted, as if soaked in motor oil. She smiled, her black, crooked, jagged teeth gleaming in the firelight, as foul drool dripped from her mouth onto my face, into my eyes, and into my mouth. I started to dry heave, the most disgusting taste I had ever experienced assaulting my senses in my short 12 years of life. As I retched, she let out another hideous cackle, piercing the dead stillness of the night. It was dark, quiet, and I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that I was going to die, destined for the same gruesome fate as my two best friends. It was then, in that moment of utter despair, that I simply accepted my fate and closed my eyes. Just as my eyelids fluttered shut, I heard it, the heavy thud of approaching footsteps, growing louder, closer. Then, a deep, booming voice, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. I opened my eyes, looking up to see a large, burly man, with a formidable beard, like a lumberjack from a forgotten age. He moved with a speed that belied his size, swinging a massive, ancient-looking axe at the creature on top of me, sending it flying several feet across the fire, where it landed with a sickening thud upon the mangled remains of my friends. He then stepped in front of me, placing himself between me and the monster. In his deep, foreign voice, he spoke again, gesturing for the creature to attack. It wasted no time, leaping at him from across the fire, aiming for his neck. But he was too quick, too prepared. He deftly hooked the top of his axe beneath its chin, swinging it around with incredible force, pinning the creature against a nearby pine tree. It clawed desperately at him before he dropped it to the ground. Then, in one swift, fluid motion, without a moment's hesitation, he severed its head. Blood gushed from its headless body, splattering across my face. The bearded man stood there for a moment, observing the now headless witch, before turning his gaze to me, speaking again in his foreign tongue. I tried to speak, to thank him, but again, nothing came out. Whatever the witch had done, it had not only paralyzed my body but my ability to speak as well. I prayed it would return. He looked away, deep in thought, for a minute. Then, his eyes met mine again, and he spoke in broken English, "Witch dead. She won't eat you. You speak later." He reached down, carefully picking me up, moving me away from the scorching heat of the fire, far enough so it couldn't burn my skin anymore. Physically and emotionally drained, I fell into a deep, dreamless slumber almost immediately after he gently set me down. That night was plagued by the most horrifying dreams, the witch a constant, ravenous presence, trying to consume me. I awoke to the cheerful chirping of birds, and for a fleeting second, I thought it had all been a terrible dream. I looked over and saw the bearded man, the lumberjack, sitting on a log not far from the dying embers of the fire, his old wooden axe resting between his legs. His face was devoid of expression, and he looked like he could use a good bath. We sat there, in comfortable silence, for a while, before he spoke again in his broken English. "Your friends, sorry, I no get here fast." Tears streamed down my face as I looked around, realizing their bodies were gone. He must have buried them, and for that, I was eternally grateful. I never wanted to see that horrific sight again. He seemed to understand my silent question. I put friends underground. Smell of blood, more witches come. More witches. The thought sent a fresh wave of fear through me. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, surprised that my voice had returned. "My name Edvard. My family come America many, many years ago, to kill witches," he responded. "There are more witches?" I asked, a tremor in my voice. "Yes, many. My family killed them for a long time. Stop from eating everyone," he replied. "You live here in the forest?" I asked, trying to comprehend the enormity of what he was saying. "Yes. Never leave forest. Leave forest, and witches leave forest," he responded. "Where is your family from?" I inquired. "Come from Scandinavia," he replied. I sat there, trying to process everything. I wouldn't have believed a word of it, if it hadn't just happened to me. Witches eat people since beginning. Witches come first, then man, he said, his voice flat, matter of fact. They were here before man was. I asked, astonished. Yes, witches make man for food. No witches, no man, you understand? He asked. I think so, I responded. They created us for their food. Yes, make man for food. Man fight back, almost kill all witches. Some witches still alive, must always look and kill witches, he explained. Are you by yourself, Edvard? I asked. No, have small village deep in forest, he responded. I thought to myself, holy cow. He's probably never left the forest and has no idea what's on the outside. It's like they're living the way we used to, 100 years ago. Time just passed them by, but for good reason. You go now. More witches come, Edvard said, his voice firm. I nodded in acknowledgement. There was no arguing with him. He came over and helped me stand, my legs stiff and aching, but the blood was starting to flow again. He held my arm, steadying me as I slowly began to walk. It wasn't long before I could walk almost normally. We walked for several miles, until we finally reached the edge of the cliffs, the same cliffs my friends and I had so eagerly climbed the day before. You get down? Edvard asked. I think so, I replied, nodding my head. You know, come back here. Tell people stay away, Edvard instructed. Yes, of course, I replied. I meant it, I would never come back here. But telling people to stay away, no one would believe my horrifying tale, and if I did tell them, they would scour the mountains for Edvard and his village, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that they must never be found. I looked down the cliffs, knowing the descent would be challenging. I turned to thank Edvard for saving my life, but all I saw was his back, his axe slung over his shoulder, as he walked back into the trees, following the river, disappearing as silently as he had appeared. I stood there for a long time, gathering my thoughts, trying to comprehend what in the hell had just happened, and how I was going to explain the loss, the disappearance, of my two best friends. I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I could never lead anyone to this place. This secret had to go with me to the grave. I fought back the tears, steeling myself, and began my careful descent down the steep cliffs. Wasn't that a chilling journey? What do you think was the most terrifying part of his encounter? Let me know in the comments below. And if you were captivated by this story and want to hear more tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, so you don't miss out on our next thrilling adventure.